I don't think so, no.
Okay. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Joshua Castano. I'm Director of Community Engagement Services here at Partners for Sacred Places. And I'm joined by my colleague,
Simon Kaufman, Director of Development at Partners for Sacred Places.
Great. And we're so glad to be spending this time with you today. As I said, we won't likely not need a full hour today. And please, if you have questions that arise during the course of the webinar, please use the Q&A box, which you'll see at the top of the control bar. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. So thanks so much. Okay. So we're going to start by giving kind of an overview of who Partners for Sacred Places are and a little bit about our organization. We hope that you've heard a little bit about us, but if you haven't, Partners is the only organization in the nation with this mission that we have, which is to support the stewardship and active community use of historic houses of worship. So we are focused on purpose-built religious properties that are older or historic across the country. We're founded and headquartered here in Philadelphia, but our reach and scope is nationwide. And so our goal is to help communities and parishes and organizations and neighbors and all sorts of people who are interested in and care about historic houses of worship and historic purpose-built religious properties. We are non-sectarian, which is an important aspect of our organization. That means that we're not a religious organization. We are a bridge builder between religion and communities of faith and the wider world beyond faith and religion. So it's important for us to have that ability to be flexible and build those connections. Of course, because we're friendly to faith, lots of our staff are deeply involved in faith. We've had a number of clergy who are staff members. I'm an active Episcopalian, and Simon once in a while gets to the local Lutheran church, right? So we've done a lot of work, including research over the years and training. So we've probably touched thousands and thousands of congregations. I think Simon may have the numbers on some of those ways that we've interacted with congregations, literally from Hawaii to Maine. So this is our passion. This is the core of what we do, helping and working with congregations and parishes like yourself. There we go. There are three areas. Of course, we're going to focus on one area today that we'll talk to you guys about. We've done research and policy. If you take a look at our website, sacredplaces.org, you'll see some of the research we've done. Sacred Places at Risk, a study from the 90s that tried to document how historic houses of worship were both playing a critical role in their communities, but we're also facing some serious challenges, some of which continue and have only grown until the present. The economic halo effect, which helps to document the economic impact that Sacred Places have on their communities. Your parishes are civic assets. You have an enormous, important economic impact on your neighbors and on your community and on the city. And we've done some really great research with partners at the University of Pennsylvania to document that. We've done publications as well to help congregations provide technical assistance on how to care for their buildings and fundraise. And we also do work where we consult with individual congregations and parishes and provide specific one-to-one resources. We'll be talking about training and technical assistance for the most part today, especially through our program, New Dollars, New Partners. Okay. So for the rest of the webinar, we'll talk about the New Dollars, New Partners training program. We'll touch on the grants that are also linked to participating in this program and the timeline, and then give you some opportunity for questions and answers. So New Dollars, New Partners training. This is one of our core technical assistance and capacity building programs that we've delivered to well over 1,000 congregations across the country of every denomination and religious background, from Roman Catholic to Unitarian. So we are familiar with, we respect, and we have good relationships with every mainline Protestant and Catholic community pretty much across the country. So we are very comfortable and very used to working in all of those different traditions and respecting the differences of those traditions as well. So the New Dollars, New Partners training, it's kind of an interesting name. The point of the training is to help parishes identify new dollars and new partners. This is really critical for a lot of parishes. Facing, economic challenges, the difficult and complex challenges around stewarding a historic building, which may be beautiful and large, and maybe a welcome and well-loved site for some of your community serving programs, but at the same time has lots of issues and ongoing challenges in terms of keeping it watertight, safe, attractive, and at its best for serving your programs and people. So what we believe is that since historic sacred places are civic assets, that means your civic institutions that play a critical role in your community, that have an economic impact on your neighbors and your neighborhoods and on the wider city in which you're located, that because of those things, you have the ability to build a wide network of support beyond your parishioners, a wide network of institutions and individuals who can help you find new resources, find new expertise and guidance, and find new support to help you take care of your buildings and to help you grow ministry and programs, and also, most critically, help you find money. So that's the most important part. The New Dollars, New Partners training will talk about care and maintenance of older and historic church buildings. We'll bring professionals with us who will talk about the special needs and the special concerns of taking care of a historic building. We'll talk about your public value. So building on the economic halo effect study, we'll talk about ways, and we'll provide even a software tool that helps you calculate the economic value of your programs and ministries on the wider community. And then putting that together and thinking about your story and your history as a parish and the stories of your ministry and programs will help you think about how to build a case for support. A really useful tool that's you might have heard about if you've done fundraising work before, that will help you tell your story, communicate your value, and invite partners and supporters from a wide network of people outside of your parish, both inside and outside. So really getting your message out to the wider world. The training will also look at how you identify assets. So how you think about what you have in terms of parishioners and friends and your building and other tools and resources you might have, and how you connect with the community. So building new community partnerships and connecting with other people across the wider community. And lastly, building on all these steps to approach and embrace a community-wide technique for fundraising. So being able to raise money in a wider way. Covered this a little bit, but New Dollars helps you tell a new story. It helps you engage new partners. It helps you develop new capital funding opportunities. The training program is delivered in 4 day-long modules where a group of congregations and parishes attend, okay? These, we say day-long, but they're really from about 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's a generous lunch break, and there are breaks in both the morning and afternoon. The training is not dry. It's I mean that. It is a pretty active, engaging, fun sort of day. There's lots of great information and there's lots of great work, but there's also lots of excitement and energy, being able to talk about some of the things that we addressed during the training, and to meet people and just like yourselves, clergy and lay leaders from other parishes who are dealing with many of the same issues, and be able to share stories and learn from each other as well, which is really wonderful. For this training, we ask that the same team of at least 2 to 3 leaders, a minimum, from each congregation attend. And that team should include a clergy person who's in leadership in the congregation, along with 2 other key lay leaders. And that team should be the same team that comes to all 4 days. 4 people is okay as well. In fact, we could encourage that in most instances. And this team is not responsible for all of the quote unquote homework, but they are responsible for bringing this information back to their parish, getting it distributed, connecting with other parishioners, and making sure that they can pull in other parishioners and volunteers who may be able to help with some of the tasks that come out of each training module. Making the case is the really big first important part of this. I've talked about this a couple of times. We think about who you are, who your story is, what is your identity, what is your place and role in terms of your mission in your community, what you have, what are your assets, what do you have of value, what do you have to share and offer to the wider community, and what you do. What are the ministries, programs, the way that you are making a place in the community with the work that you do as a sacred place. As I mentioned, we'll talk about calculating your public value, your economic impact, and we'll learn about taking care of your historic buildings and work with professionals. We'll introduce you to asset-based community development on the second day of training. This is a really powerful tool for change and for building programs, growing programs, connecting civic and community institutions to do new work. It begins by thinking about the assets that we have, thinking about breaking out of cycles of scarcity into cycles of abundance, and about building new relationships that can strengthen ministry and programs or help create new ministries and programs. We'll also look at how you use your space, how you make the most of your space, and how you build community partnership. How do you have the conversations with other institutions and leaders and neighbors? How do you channel that into initiatives or convening around shared goals and topics or areas of concern? And how can you catalyze the energy in those conversations to motivate your neighbors towards action? And then, of course, we'll spend 2 modules, 3 and 4, talking about fundraising. The third module will focus really on internal fundraising and how capital campaigns work. How do you do large-scale fundraising for your buildings or other capital needs, including how do you search for grants and do grant work. How do you think about your approaching donors? How do you talk to donors? How do you solicit gifts from donors? We'll practice that. Oops, sorry. Went too fast. I go backwards. There we go. And then we'll also talk about community-wide fundraising. So we'll also spend time thinking about how every nook and cranny, every connection, every way that you can leverage your new partners or work with your new partners to identify new dollars. So maybe former members, it may be civic institutions, it may be key donors in the community who you've been able to tell about your work and the value of your work, who can open new doors to other philanthropy or external support. So we'll talk about both internal and external fundraising and major capital fundraising. Okay. By participating in the new dollars, which is a requirement of the program, and attending all 4 days of training with your team, that will also allow parishes to qualify for grants. Getting a grant is not guaranteed for every parish that participates in the training, but to get a grant, you do have to participate in the training. So it is the gateway to obtaining a grant. And I'll also invite my colleague Simon Kaufman to jump in if he wants to add anything to what this kind of general overview. So by participating in the training, congregations are able to apply for a single grant of up to $5,000. That grant will need to go to some capital cost related directly to their ministries that serve the economically disadvantaged or the poor. Okay, what's not allowed is direct program support, like for program operating expenses, for instance. There will have to be a particular capital expenditure related to the program. It could be building issues, thinking about building needs, for instance, or things like equipment that are used or play an important role in the program. each grant will need to be matched. So if you are asking for a grant of $5,000, that means that you are probably looking at a project that's $10,000 or more in cost, and that you will be raising the other half. You see that the training, I hope you see that the point of having training is to give you some support and tools so that you can find new ways to raise that match, so that you have new muscles and new strength that you can exercise to raise new money. So the grant that we give will ask you to match at a 1-to-1 level, $1 to $1. So we really do hope that the training helps do that. And so we think of them as going together. So it gives you that opportunity and that ability to do that. Okay. Simon, did you want to add anything about grants?
I would just say that so we have had conversations with program officers at the W.W. Smith Foundation and the Patricia Kind Family Foundation, and those are the foundations that would be supplying the grants to you for these projects. As Joshua was saying, part of the content in New Dollars, New Partners is helping congregations establish or figure out which foundations to apply to, and ideally we want you to build relationships with these foundations. So I think it was the program officer at W.W. Smith who considered this, the partners is kind of like, your participation in this program is kind of like the good housekeeping seal of approval. So if you have not necessarily been successful in direct applications to these foundations before, they're very excited about this as a new model for funding congregations with programs that serve the materially poor, in large part because they want to see congregations raise new forms of money. So they are very excited about seeing you all participate in this program and increase your capacity for fundraising beyond your current members, in the same way that we are excited about seeing you increase your capacity in that way.
Great.
Oh, I think it was the deadline.
Yeah, there we go. Again, so the deadline to participate in the program, not the deadline for the grant. That will be a separate separate form, a separate deadline, and you'll hear about that once you're doing the training program. But the deadline to apply for the training program is October 11th. Let us know if you're having any problems with the application, if you haven't received the application, or if you feel that you're still waiting on information in order to make that deadline. Just be in touch with us ahead of time. The training will take place, we said there are 4 days of training. It will typically be Saturdays to accommodate people's schedules. We'll start at 9 and finish by no later than 3, oftentimes a little bit earlier, again with generous breaks throughout the day. The first day of training is already on the calendar. It is because we know we want to make sure that people are ready for this. November 16th, 2019. That's the first date that we'll be doing training. That training will take place here in Philadelphia, likely at a parish that is pretty convenient and everyone is able to get to. So we'll send the information where that is. That's the first module. The other dates are to be determined. Susan Weinman has a great question. Does it have to be the same people at all 4 trainings? We prefer, that it's the same group. That continuity is helpful. Sometimes 1 or 2 folk may be added on for a module, or someone might swap out, but we need to have at least a couple of those folk be consistent. That's very important, because if it's scattered each time, it will be hard to keep this up for everybody. The other thing is those training dates will be probably November is what we know is the first one. The second one will probably be in January. And the third will probably be in February, and the fourth will probably be in March. So there's about a month, let's say 4 to 6 weeks between each one. Susan has another question about whether or not you can watch a video of it. We do not make videos of these trainings. It's a full day from 9 to 3. So there are no videos of this. So it's important to have somebody that can at least attend for most of the day if possible. Okay. Hillary Greer. If a congregation is still working on vision, for example, we have a preschool and don't know if we're committed to keeping or even expanding it or closing it, is this training appropriate? Or should we work on vision a bit more before the training? Okay, this is a great question. So I love Hillary's question. The training is probably a great opportunity to help support your visioning process. Because the training asks questions. Who are you? What do you do? What is your story? What's your value to the community? It helps you think through what are your assets? What are the opportunities around you? So we see the training could be absolutely helpful in that kind of situation. It might help you ask some different questions. It might help you gather some data that can help you answer those questions. And it might give you a way to evaluate your answers and really discern which direction you want to go. So we think actually that the training could be a really good fit for that. That's a great question. Thank you so much, Hillary. Okay. Is there another slide here? Here we go. The application is not super detailed if you've seen it already. We just want to learn a little bit more about you. We want to know about your congregation, what it is that you do. We especially want to know about your ministries that impact people who are economically disadvantaged, because that is a criteria to participate in the program. And also a little bit about your capacity, the folk that might be part of your team, and how you would incorporate this in your work as a parish or congregation. Susan Wyman has another good question. How do you apply? I will just have to go forward on faith that we will be available for the TV dates. Yes, and like I said, we come up, there are other 3 dates we will decide with the cohort. So that's one of the reasons that the first date is set, but the other ones we poll everybody basically. So how do we apply? There is an application form that can be filled out online. It's available on our web page where this opportunity is talked about. Simon, do you know how they can get to that webpage?
Yeah, at the bottom at the bottom of our website, there is it's actually called a blog entry. The image at the top is request for applications. You probably have seen it, which is how you got to this webinar. And at the bottom of that form, there is a button to apply to the program. That is actually a link to Google Forms, so you will need a Google account to fill that out. You don't need a Gmail address, but you need a Google account. If you run into any problems with the application process, as Joshua said, just email us at partners@sacredplaces.org, and one of us will get back to you.
Caitlin Gordon has a question. How many grants will be available after the training? Simon?
So the grants, so this is a new process with W.W. Smith and Patricia Kind, but essentially the process is that when you apply, you will apply with a project in mind. We will give those projects to the 2 foundations with our Good Housekeeping seal of approval, and they will make grants directly. One of them will, I think, make it directly to you, and the other one will make it to us for you. But the short answer to your question is 1 per congregation.
Okay, Hillary Greer has 2 other questions. I think we might be able to take them together. So in what ways does the training lead us through the process of engaging the community and helping to determine vision and priorities? In that, I mean the wider community beyond just who is in the church. So in preparing the case statement, which is part of the first module of training, that is really about how do we put together what we're going to tell the wider community. So that helps the congregation discern a little bit what is our story? What are some of the themes that are important to our story? What do we do? What's the public value of what we do? And to put all that together to be able to build a case, a message to share with the wider community. The second module helps provide some tools for reaching out to those folk and being able to have constructive conversations that identify assets, and then by identifying assets, allow people to think about how to leverage those to make the most of opportunity. So the asset-based community development method or model gets introduced in the second module along with asset mapping, and that's where we start talking about how do you approach and identify community and civic institutions and leaders and have those conversations with them. So that's why we come up with a case first, and then we have the conversations with the community about you know, how do we take these assets and make the most of them for what we're doing. Okay, and it looks like Susan.
Looks like Susan found the grant to the application,
Yes.
And she had a question. Well, what happens if your matching grant is unsuccessful? So we will be submitting the projects of the accepted applicants, the accepted congregations in this program, to the two foundations that I mentioned. And they will be determining which of the projects that they are interested in funding. As I said, the program officers are very excited about this model. They want to see congregations raising funds from outside their traditional community, and they know the important work that you do. So I think that there is a very good chance, but a lot of it will certainly depend on the projects that are proposed. So the short answer is, if there are no matching grants, or if the foundations don't want to fund the projects, then there will not be matching grants for those projects. There is the possibility that one would fund it and not the other, and then we might not be able to fully fund the match for your project. That's a great question, Susan. Thank you.
If there are any other questions, oh, here we go. We've got a couple. Okay, great. Susan asks if what happens if she's the only one from your congregation that can attend the 4 seminars. Susan, that's a good question. I think that that's by a case-by-case basis. I think we would want to talk with you and hear a little bit more. If only one person could come to the training, I think that does, for us, make, I think the reflection on our end is one where we're interested in what's the larger story of your congregation's capacity. If you can't spare more than one person to come to these days, what does it look like in terms of your other volunteers and support, in terms of people, for the projects and work you're doing? Is it that they're, okay, so we're small and overextended is what Susan said. So that's an important thing to know, especially in terms of a grant. Is that something that is, so that's the kind of thing we want to talk with you one-on-one about, to hear a little bit more about your situation and talk with you a little bit about how to make this work if it's going to be helpful for you. So thanks for that good question, but you may want to email one of us directly so we can be in touch with you direct one-on-one about that. Okay.
And then Caitlin has a question about the grants. For clarity regarding number of grants, if there's one grant available per congregation, then if there are 6 groups in the training, there will be 6 grants available for the congregations to apply to. Each participant has a chance to be awarded a grant. Yes, each participant has a chance to be awarded a grant. And yes, so what we would be doing is we will be bundling your proposals to the 2 foundations that I mentioned, and they will be bundling their support. These are kind of smaller projects than they're used to doing, but as a bundle, they're willing to consider it. But to answer your question, yes, each participant has a chance to be awarded 1 grant.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susan and okay. I think my information is also available on the webpage, but if not, that's my information to get in touch with me and ask me any questions. I should have also included Simon's information here because we'll probably double team on answering your questions. So thanks everyone. Like I said, unless there are any other questions, I think we're gonna close out here at this time on the webinar. We thank all of you for the time that you've been able to spend with us. We're grateful for your interest in this, and we're really appreciative of being able to follow through with learning a little bit more about this opportunity and ask some questions. So we're really excited, and we hope that you'll all apply and that we'll get to work with all of you or most of you. So we look forward to seeing your applications. Please be in touch if you have any questions as you're doing the application or any follow-up thoughts after today. Thanks so much.